Hello, welcome to FM Corner. I'm Danny Koontz, your host. This episode and all episodes of FM Corner are sponsored by WCE, Windy City Equipment. I want to give a shout out to Josh and his team for sponsoring these. Today, my guest is the CEO of Briddlewood Facility Services. Sorry, easy for me to say. Cory Briddle. Cory, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me on here. I really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. My pleasure. Let's get started with kind of talk a little bit about your career, kind of where did it start to where you are now?
All right. So, ironically, I actually worked in restaurants from the time I was about 18 to 33 years old, and I did all the front of house jobs. I mean, anything from host to busboy to bartender to barback, wait staff, all that stuff. When I was about 33, I had met my wife and we were married, and I tried to be a stay at home dad actually for about 30 days and realized that was not for me. And
Right.
so then I went to work for her mom's company, and she had a facility maintenance company. Um, and they were actually around really early on. They were co-founding members of Prism, which is now Connects.
Sure.
And they were kind of the birth of the third party service provider, so it was really interesting. So I actually
Sure.
started in the warehouse there, and then I worked I got moved over to the department that ran this technicians in house. So I worked there for a little while, and then eventually I worked my way up, and I took over the department. And after a couple of years, the company was bought out. So when the company was bought out, I actually tried to stay on with the new ownership, and
Mm-hmm.
see, it looked like I had some really big potential for growth there and all that, but lo and behold, things just didn't work out. And to make a long story short, I just realized that I was doing a lot of sales increases. Year over year, month over month, I
Mm-hmm.
was increasing the sales and revenue in my department. And there was really a point where I went to the general manager, and I brought on a pretty big fish at the time. And I asked for commission on that one, and it was declined. And I basically made the decision that, if I could bring on clients for them, I could bring on clients for myself. And that was kind of the birth of Briddlewood Facility Services. So in 2016, I started Briddlewood, and I really spent the first 6 months just getting all the paperwork ironed out. We were established in California, and if you've ever
Sure.
opened a business in California, it's no easy feat. There's a
Sure.
mile long list of paperwork to get done, and so I kind of went through all that, and I went to a friend of mine, and I pitched him my idea for starting the business. And lo and behold, he actually agreed to it, and it was a really sweet deal for him. He really didn't have to do anything, at the time we'd given him, 50% of the company,
Mm-hmm.
and he just sat back and watched me, so I had about 6 months from that time to be on my own 2 feet, and have my own income coming in and all that. So the clock kind of started, and I started in this little room, this spare bedroom that we had in our house at the time, and I just grinded it out. I mean, I just grinded every day, and I really, I did a lot of different techniques, or tried a lot of different things. Whether it was suiting up and showing up to some corporate offices with a box of donuts or cookies and trying to get in front of people. But what I really found, what was the best thing, what really worked the best and really gave me the biggest audience, was LinkedIn. And I really utilized LinkedIn at that time to just, really what I would do is I would friend request a bunch of people, and I'd let it stack up, and then I would kind of spam them. So,
Sure.
not so bad. I wasn't an everyday spammer, but I would send a request for a conversation. That kind of stuff that we all get in our
Right.
LinkedIn inboxes. And
Sure.
it was we were coming right up to about the 6 month mark, and I was getting pretty scared with it was just me and my dog at the time hanging out in the room together. But I was able to land my first client, and it was really cool, and it really just started from there. And as things tend to do in life, it seemed like it was all these fails, fail, 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 and
Yeah,
then a couple successes all right in a row. A couple people bit, and they were willing to have conversations with me and give us a try and see if we worked out. So that was kind of the what got us really going into it. And then just from there over the years since 2016, we're just 9 years old now, and it's been a really interesting ride. I'll tell you that. I wasn't
sure.
anticipating COVID, so that was definitely a big thing. But we were really fortunate in that we had some clients that really carried us through it. That were one of them was just poised perfectly for COVID, and their business model and the way they functioned. It was absolutely perfect, and they actually were growing in COVID while other people were declining. So it was a
Sure.
we were really fortunate that they had brought us on. And just up into this day, I mean, we're still doing the same thing where we're really really active in RIFMA, and we've really gotten into that community with RIFMA, and we are actually starting to branch out to do some other trade shows to try to expand and grow, diversify our options really. So, and I
Sure.
guess, and that's pretty much what brings us to where we're at right now. Is to keep it
It's
a
a
shorter
great
story since we only have 45 minutes here.
that's a great story. Talk just a second about your company, kind of what types of service you provide and what type of customer are you seeking to do business with?
Okay, so I'll start with the types of customers that we're looking for, mostly chain retail, chain restaurant. So we
Mhm.
love the facility managers, the directors of facilities, but we also like working with property managers and people who manage big campuses or multiple buildings, stuff like that. Because the type of company that we are is we're a third party service provider
Mhm.
mostly. We do have some self performers, but in California, and then we're actually working on hiring some people here in Colorado right now. We're located in the Denver area. But we do all trades. And I mean, we've touched just about everything: your plumbing, HVAC, refrigeration. We come from a really, really big background of locksmithing, so we do a lot of work with locks, glass, doors. So that can be like your master key systems, your panic bars, your push bars, your safes, all of that stuff. So any of like your door access security, we have a lot of experience doing that. And then of course all your handyman trades, your flooring, your grout work. So we do multiple different kinds of flooring, from the eco grip and protect all to your quarry tile and your grouts, and we've kind of touched it all. And then I mean, even outside on top of that, like we've done the roofs, your exterior envelope, all of your
Mhm.
parking lot problems. We've done a lot of that stuff. So we have a pretty broad experience in everything.
Sure.
So
Right. That's great. That is
yeah.
great. Kind of for your team for a second, give me one or two things that you look for a person to be part of your team. What's those things that stick out to you when you interview someone or talk to them that goes, hey, they'll make it. They're going to be fine.
Okay, and this might sound ridiculous, but unfortunately is common, it seems like, in this day and age. But punctuality,
Mhm.
that is really one of the first things I look at. Is like, if somebody, whether we're doing a Zoom interview or we're meeting somebody in person, like, that punctuality is huge for us. Just because, especially in the facilities world, just having that dependability. But a couple of the other things that we look for, it's I'm not sure how to say it. I would say thick skinned or grit, because as you very well know, you spend a lot longer in the facilities world than I have so far. But it takes a thick skinned individual, and you got to be able to roll with the punches, and you got to be able to thrive under pressure, and all that. So I'm looking for personality traits or things that demonstrate that, and I typically try to ask probing questions, like, tell me about a time that you made a mistake and how you handled it.
Sure.
And that one's
Sure.
that's a good one. It stumps a lot of people because they expect
Sure.
the, tell us about an unhappy customer and what happened. And I'm like, no, I want to know about a mistake you made and how you handled it, because that would lead me to my other point. Is one of the biggest things that we look for, is integrity in people. And I want honest people, hardworking people. I want somebody who's willing to come to the table and say, hey, I made a mistake. How can we fix it?
Hmm.
I don't want anybody on my team that's going to try to cover up mistakes, or they're going to shirk responsibility or do anything, like, because I mean, that's, especially as a third party company, like, our integrity is one of the biggest assets that we can have.
Sure.
And it's easy for me to sit there and say that to people, but when they see it in my daily work, and my team is producing things with integrity, or they're coming to the table and saying, hey, we made this mistake, so that's really what we're looking for, is things that are really indicative of a person with high integrity. So those are
Sure.
probably the three major things that I'm really looking for in
That's
one
great. Well,
individual.
integrity, builds trust, and
Hmm.
trust is, and in a former life, I had close to 1,000 restaurants, and I was accountable for every one of those.
Hmm.
And part of it, you talked about thick skin. I joked about it many times, but I always said I'll never do it fast enough, quick enough, or cheap enough. I won't. I
Never,
just that's
ever.
just that's just the world you live in.
Yep.
But what you wanted to do was build trust. And I looked at a person on the other end of the phone who was hollering and screaming and really mad and so on. What that meant was they were scared. They didn't know what was going to
Hmm.
happen. And so they were making it a point. And so my job was to calm that down and tell them what I was going to do and then do it. And that's a two part, not just what I'm going to do, but you got to
Yeah.
do it when you tell them you're going to do it. But that integrity builds trust.
Yeah.
And once people trust you, then you're able to do your job and commit and so on. And that's critical. I like punctuality. Again, that's kind of me. Uh, be on time, do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it. And if for
Yeah.
any reason you can't, be sure and let people know that.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
as soon as you can. You spoke about your involvement in RIFMA. I wanted to ask about that, and I've seen you at RIFMA different conferences from when you started to now, where you and your company are. Why is that important for you and your company?
If you would have asked me when I first joined Riffma, I'd be like, for the customers, right? We want to meet the customers. We got to get in front
Sure,
of the decision makers and all that. And it's grown into so much more than that. And I think that's always a big part of any organization that we join. It's because we want to become visible. We do want to build relationships with people, and we want to gain clients. Because of course, most companies we're trying to grow. But what's become really what's become paramount, as far as importance with RIFMA, is giving back. And it's not just the RIFMA gives that we get to give back with.
hmm,
It's because we do the RIFMA gives, and it's huge. It's such a huge emphasis, as being part of RIFMA, that we are always, from the end of the last RIFMA gives to the next one, like, it seems like we're always talking about that. What are we going to do next? How are we going to make it better and do all that?
sure,
So doing that has been huge. But even I've started sitting on committees, and I've just gotten more and more involved in it. And I'm finding different ways to give back to, whether it's, it could be competitors, it could be people that I want to work with, or whatever it is. Like, either they're helping mentor me in some way, or I'm helping mentor them in some way. And there's uh, this constant, like, reciprocal, like, giving back to one another, right? And it doesn't
hmm,
and that's what's been really cool about that. And I will tell you, like, we went to a early on when we started RIFMA, we started attending a lot of different trade shows, and we spent a couple of years, like really heavily going to trade shows. And it was me and my wife, because I'm the CEO and she's the acting CFO, but, like, let's be honest,
sure,
she's the real boss, just so everybody hears it out there. So so but what we just found, like, RIFMA was so unique in what it provided for, if you're looking for bang for your buck. Like, I have built tremendous relationships here at RIFMA, and it's some of the people are, like, sure, like, they were, like, people I wanted to work with, and maybe I never ended up working with them, but, like, they've still evolved into really good relationships, whether we work together or not. There's facility managers I can call that work for companies that we don't even do business with, but I can ask them questions on, like, hey, I have this problem. If
sure,
I were approaching you with it, like, how would you want me to handle it? Can you give me some insight? Can you help me, navigate this the right way? Because I want to do the right thing, and it's and there's just so much of that happens at RIFMA, aside from the trade show, getting in front of these decision makers and stuff like that. And really, I guess what it boils down to, and especially I love this because we're a family owned company, is it seems like a big family at RIFMA, and it really does. And I'd never realized like how small that facility manager world in the world of restaurants, how small it really was until I started going to RIFMA. But the people, especially the people on the board and the people who have been a part of RIFMA for a really long time, what I've really noticed is like when you are really spending your time and energy giving back to RIFMA, that's when they really start to give you a chance. That's when they'll really talk to you.
Right.
So it's just been really cool to just be involved and have it become so much more than just a way to make sales.
I think it's the word you use is relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
for during my tenure at RIFMA, which was 20 years at least,
Mm-hmm.
probably from day one, it was relationships and building, and had now I'm on the other side of it, basically retired. I'm doing this, and I'm doing some consulting work, but not full time. But like even just a mutual friend in RIFMA a few months ago called and goes, "Hey, Danny, you need to call this guy and you need to talk to him because he wants to talk about RIFMA. And you will be the best person to talk to him about what all RIFMA can do for his company." And so I'm like, "Sure, I'll call him." So I call him. We set a 30-minute call. We spent an hour and a half on the phone. After
Sounds like
that,
our first conversation.
we set up calls once a month, and now they range from an hour to 2 hours. I went and spoke to his company, to his people about facilities and so on, and what just came out of a simple request is a brand new friendship, a strong one, and we
Yeah.
talk a ton, and hadn't done business together, none of that, just we working together and just running things by each other. And so I think that relationship piece is what really kind of helps
It,
RIFMA with people and so on.
it is. And one of the things that I didn't mention, and that it seems like at least the vast majority of people that I interact with at RIFMA, and I certainly don't get to interact with everybody, but everybody seems to have this common goal that everybody wants to make RIFMA better.
Mhm.
Like there's so much time and energy and effort spent on like making RIFMA better, making sure it's a quality organization for not just the facility managers and the decision makers, but the vendor partners that are signing up for it too. Like they really keep this solid balance of like where it's mutually beneficial for both sides. And I
Sure.
absolutely love that. And then its members on both sides of the fence just work so hard at like maintaining that quality and just pushing for making their efforts go towards making sure that they maintain that.
Sure. A lot of pride
Yeah.
from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, Give me something that you weren't very good at early in your career that you've worked on to be a lot better. You may not be an expert in it, but you've worked on it really hard to improve it.
I think the trade knowledge, I have to say it's trade knowledge. Like I got really fortunate when I started out early on and I was working with my mother-in-law's company and with the in-house team of technicians. They were locksmiths and glazers and handymen, and I got to go out on a lot of jobs with them, and that was really cool. And so I learned a lot about it. But when I started our company, I honestly, like, I thought I would end up more heavy in the retail side of things, and I didn't. I progressed into restaurants, and that's just where the opportunities started to present themselves. And with that, like, well, what I came in with a lack of understanding for HVAC, refrigeration, restaurant equipment. I mean, like, I can tell you honestly, like, with some of my first couple service calls were dealing with these dough mixers, and I had absolutely no clue what they did, what they were, and I'm literally like trying to dispatch service requests and like learning about them at the same time. So I've made a really big effort towards like educating myself. Like
Sure.
I do not have my CRFP yet, but I have studied for it so many times and I just haven't taken the test. And I've gone through all the modules and I've done all that. But even seeking like further stuff, whether it's like, reading the magazines or the newsletters on like different types of equipment or how things are changing in the restaurant world and
Mhm.
stuff that they're using especially in like QSRs and all that. But also, just if I sit down in YouTube and like, how does, tell me how this works, and taking the time when I'm in something to just try to get the best understanding I can. And to the extent where some of my vendor partners they don't really hate me, but they know when they get on the phone with me that I will hold them hostage, and I'll be like, no, I need you to explain this to me like I'm a kindergartner, and I want to understand what you're talking about. Like because
Sure.
because once you explain it to me, once it clicks in my head, like it sticks there, so
Yeah.
that's
Sure.
my biggest push, and it's something that's, it's a forever thing. I was just thinking, like, trying to set aside my schedule going into 2026 on like, okay, like this is going to be the year I'm going to get my CRFP. I'm going to buckle down, and I'm going to take that test. But like, how else can I educate myself? Like, how else will that become beneficial? And it's just so much because I work in so many different trades.
Sure.
So
Sure.
it
Absolutely.
keeps it fun.
That's great. That's great. In your opinion, and you deal with several of these people, both on the retail side, well, they're property managers, but on the restaurant side, mostly facility managers. What's the secret to being a successful facility manager?
Oh, I read this question, and this is such a tough answer. There's so many things that go into being a successful facility manager, and there's- I don't know that there's one perfect recipe, right? Um, but I think like great communication, delegation, organization, organizational skills, and knowledge, coupled with the ability to thrive under pressure. And then the last thing is being able to build and maintain good relationships. I think all of those items are super clutch, and I think nothing goes as far as building and maintaining good relationships. And I guess to elaborate on that just a little bit, what I mean is like there's got to be give and take in their relationships, right? Like
Mhm.
I've had clients who are all take and no give. They're just like
Sure.
cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. No, I can't do this. No, you got to drive the cost down. You got to do that. And it's just like, but then there's other people that like, I'm very transparent about our business model and the way it works up front so that there's no surprises and there's nothing like that. And, even if something's too expensive, I'll call them, tell them we have the option. But like, it's really, really hard to do anything successful when we're not like really given a chance, right? Like and
Sure.
I guess that's the best example, but relationships will go the furthest, and being able to maintain good relationships will carry any facility manager along the way.
It's funny as you talk about that, and I will give you a couple of things that I did during my facility time that I think worked out. I was very upfront with my vendors, very upfront.
Hmm.
And I would go to them and I'd say, okay, look, here's the deal. I've been told to cut my total budget by 5% for next year. Okay. No bull to it. That's the deal. That's what I got to do. I have you in the room today because I want to talk to you about how we do business together. And I want you to help me figure out your portion of that 5%. And what I want you to do is I want you to tell me what we're doing that's wrong. That's what I want. Tell me what we're doing that's wrong. What do we make you do that doesn't make sense? That if we did it a different way, it would be cheaper and better for you. Thus, it will be better for me. And it's a pain in your butt, by the way, too, the way we make you do something. Tell me. And then get those people who I trust, who are my vendors, to help me figure it out. Not just cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. Whatever you give it to me, it's got to be cheaper. No, here's what I'm up against. I need your help.
Right.
Help me. And then the other part I think is critical for a facility manager, especially in the restaurant industry, and it ties to your point. You have to support your vendor partners when they need to be supported. And I don't care if you're sitting in the C-suite with everybody that's a big wig in your company. When your vendor is right or they're doing something the right way, you have to protect them. You picked them, odds are. You're the
Right.
one. And we've all seen people, and I have several friends in this industry, but the first time the vendor fell down, they fired him. Well, sooner or later, they didn't have anybody left. And there wasn't any company out there that was rated high that wanted to work with them because they knew the first time something went wrong, what was going to happen.
Right.
I worked for a restaurant company with 1,000 restaurants. We made bad meals every day. It happened. Somebody made a mistake. Something wasn't cooked right. The drinks got whatever. That's fine. That's part of it. And you have to
Mm-hmm.
talk about that. It goes both ways. So I think, backing your vendors. And if your vendors see that when they're right, you will stand up for them, you're going to get a whole lot more,
Yeah.
because that trust factor's there. I think that's critical. Those are great points that you brought up.
Well, and you
Um,
did say, you talked about, and I just want to say this quickly and then we can move on, but it's like what you talked about is collaboration, and like those are, it will always be the favorite clients that we can collaborate with them, where we're making a contribution to the way that they function. We're not just, a one job for hire, and
sure,
that's what we want to do. Is that's how we want to build those relationships, is collaborate together.
absolutely, absolutely. Who are your mentors that's kind of helped coach you along the way?
Oh, that's so many. Okay, so my mother-in-law was a huge mentor. My wife is and probably always will be my biggest mentor. I told you my mother-in-law had a company doing this, and
Mhm.
she'd sold it, but my
Sure.
wife literally grew up in this industry. She watched the industry just grow and flourish from, just a couple of people that do what we do
Mhm.
to, now it's a pretty saturated market of third-party service companies. Um, but I mean, I have friends. My old business partner, he was a great mentor, showing me how to kind of work the ropes and do business. Um, and then just a lot of, like, my mom, my dad, my grandma. I mean, people who just instilled in me a good work ethic, a sense of integrity. My grandpa was this guy that every time he introduced me to a friend, he'd be like, "Hey, this is Jim. He's a hard worker." And that's how, and like, I never thought much about it until I was in business, and I was like, my grandpa just, he respected other men who worked hard, and he instilled that in me and my brothers, and so that was really cool. But and then just some of the other people that I love to talk about, that I wanted to give honorable mentions to, were people that I've really watched in RIFMA. I mean, Danny, you're one of them. You had a conversation with me very early on in my company, and you took time out of your day to converse with me, and we didn't do business together, and I don't think we ever really did, but we've
Mhm.
always talked. We've had lunches together. We've had, broke bread together. But Tom Likens has done the same thing for me. He's taken
Sure.
time out of his days to answer my questions and tell me what he does and how he does it and why he does it. Jay Roach has done the same thing. Drew Reese, he's always, been really good to me, and we've done a lot
Mhm.
of work together, and at various companies that he's worked at, and but he's also, again, like, when I look to these people like you and Jay and Tom, like, I see kind of mentor figures, right? And I want to probe you and ask questions and, like, pick your brain and, like, know, like, how it all works out there. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's been really cool that I've been allowed the opportunity to do that. So
That's
um
that's very kind. Tom Likens and Jay Roach are good people.
yeah, they
Both of them
are. Yeah.
really good people. They are. Give me the best piece of advice you've ever been given.
Is This is another little nugget from my wife, and it's cost of doing
Okay.
business, right? And I'll tell a quick story about this, but, like, early on, what with that first client that I had landed, I had done this job where we had to get into a safe because they were locked out of it. I called them up front. I told them the cost. I could only get this one vendor out there. I couldn't find anybody else, and he was charging. He knew he had us over a barrel, and he was charging for it, right? But I did all the right things. I got all the approvals. I had it all in writing. I did all the stuff, right? But then the CFO of this company was like, "Nope. If you send me that invoice, we're never doing business together again." you know and I was just like, I was so mad, and our company was so little, and we could not take the loss at the moment. But my wife was just like, you know hey, cost of doing business, you should do it. And I did it, and it was so crazy because after I did it, this guy loved us, the floodgates opened, and we proceeded to do a lot more business with them. And it was just like, it was such a small moment, and such a, I had to really smash my pride and my ego in that moment, to being, I was right.
Sure.
And it was such a huge learning lesson in just like, hey, you know what? It's not always about being right, but it's always like, what are we contributing to this relationship? What am I doing? Can we take this loss for them right now? Who knows why they need it
Sure.
at that moment, right?
Sure. That's great. Great example.
Yeah,
Two more for you. The
sure.
first one is quickly give me your biggest success and biggest failure in business.
So, this one was hard. It was a little more. It felt a little more ambiguous than the rest of them. But like,
Hmm.
I think the biggest success for me has been just the resilience. Just being able to forge on. And I mean, I jokingly mentioned COVID, but
Sure.
COVID was crazy. I mean, we had a meeting one day where I'm just pumping up my team and I'm like, hey, don't worry, we're going to figure this out and we're going to come up with ideas and we're going to collaborate together. And then the next day I walk in the office and the whole world had literally shut down and I had to
Sure.
pay everybody to fill out their unemployment, you know? And it was just like, but we've been super resilient through everything. And I've stayed super positive. And it's just, um, not to get overly religious or anything, but I've just operated with a lot of faith that no matter
Sure.
what we do, like I'm trying to operate with integrity. I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm going to keep pushing out there. And there's been a lot of ups and downs in business, as it is.
Sure.
We've made some mistakes with clients where we've lost good clients. We've made some mistakes where we've lost good employees. Because like I made some mistakes from a leadership standpoint, and it's but through all of that, like it's I might go to bed and be bummed out about it, but like I've just always woke up the next day with the determination to forge on, right? To do,
Sure.
learn from these experiences and don't repeat the mistakes. So I think that's been my biggest success. Um, in God, this is always a hard one. It's funny because this is the same question that I asked the people that I'm going to hire. I think the biggest failure for me was it's come in terms of leadership, right? Like I was not prepared in life to necessarily be the CEO of a company, and I don't have a ton of schooling. Like I went to college and I did enough to where I would have like an associate's degree, but then I ended up not finishing college for personal reasons and all that. And I ended up starting this company at the time. So it kind of gave me a lack of education in that, how to operate a business. Right. And so everything that I've had to do, I've had to learn on the fly. So like my failures have come in like where I've let my team down, my people down, like those people that I've lost because of, maybe I wasn't engaged enough with them on a daily basis, or maybe,
Mhm.
maybe maybe I didn't know what I was doing in some instances, and I have to own that. And those have been definitely my biggest failures, and just that trial by fire and learning by my own mistakes, in all different facets of business, right?
Sure. Well, sometimes your biggest failures, what it does is what it teaches you not to do going forward. And
Right.
it ends up being part of your success, is
Yeah.
what you learned. I like you, I learned from the people that taught me. And that was years and years ago in a whole different environment. And they hollered and screamed and called you names. I had to go home and look up at night to see what they were talking about. But you kept coming back.
Hmm.
And what you did was learn. By the time I got into managing and so on, well, I managed the way I was taught. But that time was changing. It was a different
Hmm.
environment than what I grew up under. And so I had to learn how to do it. And I wanted it to be perfect. And I wanted to touch everything so I could make it be perfect, which you can't, and
Right.
that's, you
Right.
mentioned delegation early on. That's where I kind of learned and managed differently. So I think sometimes some of your failures turn out to help you be more successful down the road because you may not know what to do, but you sure know what not to do.
Yeah.
And
Well, and that's one of the things that made this question so difficult, is because that is my viewpoint, right? That is my opinion. That's how I always feel about failures. I teach my kids that. I teach, and I'm like, it's okay to fail, and I don't care about failing in front of people. Like I'm okay with all of that and just being human because we all do it. Of course, I'd love to save some face whenever I can, but
Sure.
like,
Sure.
but it's okay with me, and I don't get so overly embarrassed or whatever by it, as long as I can, as long as I can look at myself and say like, you learned from it, and then it's, yes, it is a failure, but it does become that success,
That's correct. Absolutely. My last question, what's your go-to saying that means the most to you, or you have it on your wall or on your board or whatever?
So the go-to saying I have is, um, it's the one in my signature line. And now that I'm on the spot, like I'm choking, and I'm gonna look it up. But it says I'm just gonna look it up because I don't want to mess it up. So good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better and your better is best.
Absolutely. It's a great
So
one.
that's probably one of the biggest ones, that because I just read it every day and I just look at it, and it just means a lot to me.
That's
But
great.
the other one that I really wanted to talk about was like, and I think this one's probably more impactful, is it's so simple and we hear it so often, but do the right thing when nobody's looking. Like I don't have a lot that I can say about it, but it's it's just like, I do have a game that I did want to talk about that goes along with this, because it's, so this game is, you get 1 point if you do something nice for someone and they find out you did it because somebody else told them. Um, and now, if you do something nice for someone and they never find out that you did it, you get 2 points. And here's the deal: if you ever tell anyone that you did something nice for them, or if you ever tell anybody your score, you lose the game. So anybody who's listening, feel free to email Danny and let him know what your score is. And
That's great. But that is, there's, when you see that kind of person, or you find out something that someone has done for someone else and never talked about it, never mentioned it, so on, it just makes you smile, but because they're doing it for the right reason. It's not
yeah,
for the accolade for them, it's for another person. They're helping someone, and it just makes you smile. That's
yeah,
huge. But it's funny. It's a question I ask everybody that ever comes on FM Corner, is just because I want to hear what people say. Mine very
yeah,
simple, very simple. Be better today.
yeah,
And because of being a facility manager, you can't go home and think about everything that didn't go right today. It'll drive you
yeah,
crazy. It will drive you out, out of the industry. I come back every morning with a clean sheet of paper. I'm going to start over. And
yeah,
my whole goal is be a little better today than I was yesterday. And if I could
yes,
do that every day, sooner or later I get better at what I do, but leave what happened yesterday alone, start all over today,
yeah,
but just be better, do better today than yesterday. But
yeah.
it's very interesting to listen to people, and everybody has one, and so on, that they talk about or they put on their email like you do and stuff like that. It's just things that matter to people. It's always very interesting to listen to what people have that they
I think
use.
Tom's is better, right? Tom likens it. What is it? No best, only better.
Yes.
Is it something like that, right?
That's
I'm like,
totally
that's like a
better.
really
Yeah.
short version of what my email says. I'm like, I should just steal that from Tom. Like,
That is correct. That is great. Well, Cory, thank you so much for taking the time. Appreciate all you're doing. Appreciate all you do in RIFMA, and wish you nothing but success going forward. We thank everybody for listening. Again, shout out to Windy City for being our sponsor, and we'll be talking to you soon. Cory, thanks so much for doing this with me.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.